No matter how much your camera costs, you can still create amazing cinematic B-roll footage on any budget. Whether you have a fancy DSLR, an action camera, or a phone, in this video I'm going to show you 6 great tips for getting the best footage out of any device that you have. So without any further ado, let's get started. First things first, before you start filming, you're going to want to dig into your camera settings. And whether you have a phone, a GoPro, or a bigger camera, there will be a certain amount of flexibility within all of them. I recommend changing your camera settings to the highest resolution possible and a higher frame rate, as this is going to open up more possibilities during the editing process. For example, if you film on an iPhone, all you have to do is open up the settings, search for camera in the top search bar, and if you select record video, I recommend selecting 60 FPS in 4K if you have the storage, but 1080p at 60 FPS is also a good option. If you have an action camera like a GoPro, you can also change the resolution and the frame rate. And I'm also going to recommend switching over to linear mode. Most people associate GoPro footage with that wide angle look, which isn't very cinematic, so switching over to linear mode is going to crop in your frame, and that's going to give you better results for a cinematic montage. Now, some entry-level cameras are restricted to 24 frames per second when shooting video, but don't panic if that's the case for you. These tips are still going to help you produce some amazing results. The next tip for creating amazing B-roll footage is to pay attention to lighting. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to film everything in a studio setup like this. You should also pay attention to lighting when you're filming outside. For example, if you can help it, you should probably avoid shooting any B-roll right in the middle of the day. At this time, the sun is in the middle of the sky at its strongest, and that can make your footage look quite flat, harsh, and overexposed. So instead, to get the best results, I recommend trying to shoot around golden hour. During the hours around sunrise and sunset, the light from the sun is usually a lot softer, and there can often be some amazing colours that you can add to your frame. But of course, sometimes there's no choice and you have to film at midday. So in this case, I just recommend choosing your locations carefully. For example, if you choose to shoot in a forest, the branches and the leaves on the trees will often filter out the harshness of the sun, giving it that nice soft look. You could also consider buying yourself an ND filter. You can buy these in all sorts of different shapes and sizes and for different devices, and what it will do is help restrict the amount of light going into your camera lens. So that again can get rid of any overexposure even when you want to keep your aperture wide open on a DSLR to get those cinematic shots. Next up is camera movement. In big budget movies, film crews often use expensive Steadicams, cranes and dollies to create smooth shots, but these days there are so many ways to recreate this look from home. You can buy budget gimbals, poles and stands for pretty much any camera these days, and they can dramatically improve the quality of your B-roll. But you can still get creative without spending any money. If you've got a DSLR, you can just use the camera strap to create some smooth shots. By pulling it tight away from your body while making slow panning movements, you can dramatically reduce the camera shake in your footage. GoPros and phones often have built-in stabilization features, so make sure those are enabled too. And no matter what camera you use, you should always be looking for ways to incorporate movement into your shots. The easiest way to do this is by having a person or subject within the frame, and you can follow behind them and dolly around them to reveal locations. Another great thing to look out for is ways to include foreground elements into your shots. And this can be a really great method for emphasizing the camera movement as you're panning. And lastly, just try not to rush. If you try a camera movement and it doesn't work, just stop, reset, try again, and it's always useful to have an extra take when you get into the editing process. The next tip is angles. One of the biggest mistakes I see when beginners start creating B-roll is that they shoot everything from their eye level. Try crouching and getting lower to the ground to get some more interesting angles of your subjects. Get close in on your subjects to focus in on some interesting details. And make sure you get some wide shots as well to get some more perspective on your location. And trust me, you'll feel very thankful for having this variety when you get to the editing process. And whilst this next point isn't anything technical, storytelling might be one of the most important parts of shooting great B-roll. Many beginners make the mistake of creating montages of B-roll that just feel a little bit random. You can have lots of very pretty shots in a row, but if they're not connected in some way by some sort of story, it can be quite hard for your audience to follow, and it can make them feel a bit unengaged. Even when shooting the very simplest of montages, you should try and tell a very short story. For example, if the purpose of your B-roll is to introduce a new location in your vlog or your film, you could start with some detailed close-ups And then with some slow camera movement, you could gradually transition to a wide shot of the new location. And this can help the audience feel like they're exploring and discovering this place with you. And of course, finally, your B-roll is all going to come together during the editing process. First of all, seeing as at the start of this video we changed our cameras to a higher frame rate, we can now slow down our footage. And slow motion can be a great way to emphasize certain shots or movements, and it can even be a way to help smooth out any shakiness that you've filmed. And there are loads of other ways to make your footage look more cinematic. You could add the black bars on the top and bottom of the frame. You could add some extra stabilization. And of course, choosing the right music is one of the most important elements of the editing process, because this can change the whole mood, feeling, and even the meaning of your B-roll montage. If you are looking for a simple video editor to get started on making your B-roll montages, head down to the video description and click through to Veed. Veed is a simple online video editor that allows you to edit your footage completely within your internet browser, so there's no need to download any software. So click through to get started on Veed for free, and if you like what it can do, then maybe you could join the Pro license to get access to more effects. And that is 6 great ways to create cinematic B-roll footage on any camera. If you found this video useful, make sure you leave it a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you've got any questions about shooting your B-roll footage, leave them down in the comments below. And I'll see you next time.